Hello, nice to meet you here. I am Abby Youran, an MPhil student from the School of Communication, Hong Kong Baptist University. My research focuses on political communication, especially censorship and propaganda, and their influence on public opinions. I am presenting a paper co-authored by me, Yanru, a computer science student from the University of Hong Kong, and BEATTIE, an assistant professor from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, whose research focuses on political psychology and global political economy. Our paper is entitled, "Can Immigrants be Polarized by Information Sources?" An investigation into information sources and political attitudes of new mainland Chinese immigrants in Hong Kong. Welcome. Last year, Hong Kong's anti-extradition bill movement drove the world's attention to the tensions between Hong Kong and mainland China. Behind the salient split between Hong Kongers and mainlanders, there is also a less visible split among new mainland Chinese immigrants in Hong Kong, a group of people whose political opinions are both underexpressed and understudied. While some new mainland Chinese immigrants in Hong Kong joined the protests and signed anti-extradition petitions, many others opposed the movement. So first, let me introduce you to new mainland Chinese immigrants in Hong Kong. They are a group of people who come from a heavily censored information environment to a relatively free information environment. There are around 3,000 mainland Chinese immigrants getting Hong Kong permanent resident status every year. Besides that, there are also more than 30,000 mainland Chinese students coming to Hong Kong for higher education every year. Previous research about this group of people shows that, compared with Hong Kong locals, they are more pro-establishment, they vote less for pro-democracy oppositions, and more exposure to political information cannot alter their conservative political attitudes. A potential weakness of this study is that it only examines exposure to political information without investigating the sources of information. Yet immigrants are a unique group of people. They usually have transnational connections to both their host and home country, so they inhabit two distinct information ecologies. Therefore, our study seeks to answer the question, what are the political information sources of new mainland Chinese immigrants in Hong Kong? Are they using Hong Kong or mainland Chinese information sources? We also hope to examine whether media from different regions polarize immigrants in different directions. Here are some interesting findings. First, we found that mainland Chinese immigrants love sensitive news about mainland China, but the media they choose generally avoid sensitive news about mainland China. Let's have a closer look at it. First, we asked our participants whether they would check more sources to know more about the news if they encountered a piece of information about unfamiliar political news about Hong Kong, the right column, non-sensitive political news about mainland China, the left column, or sensitive political news about mainland China, the middle column. As we can see, they are more interested in sensitive political news about mainland China. However, when it comes to media choice, we can see that they tend to choose mainland Chinese traditional media and mainland Chinese social media. As we all know, mainland Chinese traditional media are heavily censored. But how about social media? We asked our participants how often did they encounter political information when using different social media platforms. The height of each column shows the corresponding social media platform's political information density. We further asked the ratio of mainland Chinese sensitive news, the light blue part, mainland Chinese regular news, the dark blue part, news about Hong Kong, the light green part, and news about other countries, the dark green part. As we can see, those in the red square, which are mainland Chinese social media platforms, they mainly feed users with regular news about mainland China. We think the discrepancy between what mainland Chinese immigrants are interested in and what media they are actually consuming is due to their limited capacity to find the right media that can gratify their needs. This incapacity can be a result of their limited knowledge of the politics, economics, and cultures of Hong Kong and other countries, the language barriers, and their lack of knowledge of the media landscape in Hong Kong and other countries, which is due to the previous censorship. We further examined the relationship between new immigrants' information sources and political attitudes. We found that the more they use mainland Chinese information sources, the more nationalistic and authoritarian their political attitudes are. The more they use Hong Kong and overseas information sources, the more they support freedom and democracy. In addition, using Hong Kong media can also decrease their nationalism. We also tested the cultivation effect of social media. As shown in the table, compared with light users, the bottom 25%, heavy users, the top 25%, of mainland Chinese social media platforms hold a more conservative political attitude, give more support to national unity, and become more supportive of national unity after coming to Hong Kong. Overseas social media's cultivation effect is even more salient, affecting not only individual support for national unity, but also their support for freedom and democracy. The comparison between heavy and light users of Chinese and overseas social media shows that heavy users of Chinese social media platforms tend to be more conservative, while heavy users of overseas social media platforms tend to be more liberal. However, we also find that although Chinese social media platforms are used much more frequently compared with overseas social media platforms, time spent on overseas social media platforms is more powerful in predicting both current political attitude and changes in political attitude. This finding seems to contradict with the cultivation theory, which proposes that long-term exposure, rather than short-term one, shapes our worldview. A possible explanation is that majority, if not all, of our participants have long previous exposure to Chinese social media. Therefore, the worldview shaped by Chinese social media is written in their similarity in political attitude, rather than their differences. While exposure to overseas social media platforms explains their difference more powerfully, since such exposure is relatively new, most starting after migration to Hong Kong, and such exposure is not a common practice for our participants. A major limitation of our study is that it is a cross-sectional study, which cannot elucidate causal relationship. The relation we found between information sources and political attitude can be explained by both media effect and selective exposure. Longitudinal studies should be deployed to explore these causal relations in a more accurate way. Several political communication studies have already taken this approach, but few have applied it to studying immigrants. We believe that immigrants migrating to a country allowing freedom of speech from a country with heavy speech censorship constitute a great population for political polarization research, since media outside the Great Firewall are essentially new to them. In this way, we can observe their change in in information sources from a fresh start. Another potential research area is the factors constraining immigrants who come from a censored information environment from adapting to the host country information environment, which I believe is due to the inertia of censorship. I am currently doing my thesis on this topic, so please stay tuned if you are interested. I have also put a link to our full paper in the comments section. Please check it out for further information about the current study. So, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.